Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast. Today we have a very special episode. I feel like I say that about every time, but this time I really mean it. Because some of our most downloaded episodes that we ever do are about products and specifically product deep dives when we're launching a new product. And that's exactly what this podcast is today. We are going to go deep on the design of the KotaUL backpack. Now, this backpack is launching on Kickstarter. It's on Kickstarter if you're hearing this right now. And if you're hearing it later, you'll be able to still find it somewhere on our website. But it's just coming out, so there's a ton to talk about. There's just a lot here. So we've got Brigham, our lead designer, on the podcast, and we're going to be going way back in the archives of how this project started, why we wanted to build it, and then into all the intricacies of the pack. And I've been, on weeks of before Kickstarter launches and stuff, I really get pulled heavily back into this, and I've been reading through all of the content we have. I've been filming videos, doing other things like that, and unfortunately, there's no possible way to go into the detail that we're about to go into on this podcast on other platforms. We can just go deeper. We can talk about all these little tiny nuances that, as I'm going through other platforms, it's like, man, I'd love to say this. There's just not enough time and not a good way. So this is going to be the best way for you to know all of the little details that make the KotaUL what it is, and really that make the biggest difference on this pack. So right out of the gate, I thought it'd be a good thing, Brigham, to start with the name of the Koda backpack, because I think that gives us the premise of the whole pack. When it came to naming the Koda, we had the whole team submitting ideas, and the idea that I actually submitted was Koda, the KotaUL, because to me, from the very beginning, I had a dream for this pack, and that dream was that I would have the ability to do trips such as the one I'm about to describe. I lived in Malaysia for a while, and in Malaysia, there is a mountain called Mount Kota And Mount Kota is an area that I would love to fly into Malaysia and then go do this backpacking trip. You typically are spending a night on the mountain and then coming back off, so that you can be at the top right there in the morning when you have the best vantage points and so on and so forth. And that trip was like, that would be the perfect scenario, because all these other packs out there that I've ever used can't fill that need. They're either a backpacking backpack that has a bunch of straps, doesn't look that professional, usually don't fit carry-on standards, and they're just not the best to actually do the travel portion, say through airports or cars, in and out of Ubers or whatever it is. They're not the best for that. And then the other alternative is I've had a variety of travel backpacks, and these travel backpacks they're just not built for that application either. Usually their organization is built wrong. They don't have, and the absolute biggest one for sure is their frames and hip belts and basically suspension systems. I guess if you just wrap them all into one, they're not ideal for this type of scenario. And if you're going to be backpacking all day with that thing, you will hate life by the end of it. I can promise you that. As someone who has spent thousands of dollars on travel bags and thousands of dollars on backpacks and tested a lot, this is a real need. So anyways, back to that original thing. I proposed the name KotaUL, and it got adopted by the team, kind of got voted on as the one that they liked. But the idea is that the KotaUL was designed to go and hike something like Mount Kota. So that's where we get this weird name, but also that is kind of the premise of this backpack. It's something you can take terminal to trail. It's something that you could do like our Seattle trip this year, where you fly into an airport, rent a car, go on a backpacking trip, then hop Airbnb to Airbnb, do day hikes and all sorts of different varieties of travel. It's really a piece built to do that. And that's what makes it so magical, is there really isn't very many pieces out there that even attempt to do this right. And the ones that we have that are out there, we've tested, used, and didn't meet what we wanted. So I'd like to kind of move in here to the IDs of the product. So a while ago, before actually Brigham was here, this was on our design board. This is something I wanted to be building, and it was something that I was currently testing product for. So there's a lot of history in what we wanted to build, and I think that's something that I wanted to hit right up front is just a big pat on the back to you, Brigham, is you really took like this idea that I had for a long time and turned it into a product that honestly checked every box and then did more beyond that. So big pat on the back to you. But when I first brought this product to you, what do you remember as far as me, or like what were the premises of what we wanted to build? What were like the three or the biggest IDs that were like, hey, this needs to be in the pack and these are the differentiators that we need to meet if we're going to design the product we want?
Yeah. These may not even be the ones that you're looking for, but just something, because there's a lot that goes into it, but they're like some of the main things are addressing like what are the inadequacies that you found in the existing product offerings, right? Like all the packs that you bought and tested, like what were the pain points, or like what made those packs like kind of contribute to like frustration or discomfort or pain when you used them for travel. So that like generated a lot of the momentum or like the direction that we needed to go. Is like, well, if we look at, for example, pack A and it has these features and these characteristics and it's horribly uncomfortable, like what is it about that makes it uncomfortable? And we looked at a lot of those things. So basically a lot of the common themes are travel packs that are built to be more like a luggage piece or that work carrying in your hand. And then they have a novelty or a token set of shoulder straps or a token hip belt, that when you actually try to use those features, they generally suck. Like they just are inadequate for what you're trying to do, which is just get through like the transit process comfortably. So whether that's, when you do feel like you want to have both your hands available, so you want to put your piece of luggage on your back, then it becomes very uncomfortable. And the common areas that occurs are the suspension system. And then what's directly connected to that is any kind of support system for the suspension. So what we found is like a lot of these travel packs are just flimsy. It doesn't matter how thick a foam you put in the shoulder straps, if that pack is designed to be a suitcase with straps and it doesn't have any kind of like support system or stability and it's flimsy, when you load that up with all the things you need to travel with, it barrels out, it's not stable and it is incredibly uncomfortable to wear. Like what if you get to the airport at a busy time when you're in line for 45 minutes to an hour?
Just happened to me.
Or what if you don't live someplace where it's practical to own a car, so then you have to go from like a bus system to a train system to the airport system, and then you reverse that at your destination and then when you get home. So
we're going to talk about comfort because it is like one of the biggest things. And pardon me, I'm going to crack this open here. It's been a long week and I've been pulling some late nighters and I need a little energy. That's not normal for me, but it's going to be a long episode. So we're going to need this because there's so much to cover. We're going to dive deep into the comfort for sure. Some of the other things, like high level really quick though, that this product needed to tackle in my mind, and like the biggest one that just drove me bonkers, like right away hated the pack almost, was forced organization. And basically packs that did one thing well, but nothing else well. Or if you didn't like the way that like it loaded or carried certain things, then it was like garbage, right? Like the clamshell opening, right?
Yeah.
If you don't load that a certain way, or if it's not full, like if it's half empty, looks like crap. So that was like a big one. Is in order for this pack to do what we needed, it needed to be super versatile because every trip is different. I take this pack traveling international with my family. I've taken this pack on like a weekend with my wife out to Montana. I've taken this pack backpacking. I've taken this bag to Seattle for backpacking on the trail and other types of travel. I take it to the gym every single day. I do a lot with this pack, and these other packs that I've used absolutely, I'm going to use a strong word here, but they suck if you don't use them the way they want. So that was a big portion that we wanted to build into this as well. Weight. Some of these packs that we have are 6+, sometimes up to 7 or 8 pounds. That is like as much as I want the pack to weigh almost loaded. You know what I mean? Like I want that pack to be closer to 10 pounds total. And so if you're starting with a weight that high, that's a major thing. That's kind of a high level consideration that we had. What other like real high level ones have I not touched on? Those are like the big ones that I know for sure were like, they're big enough problems and stuff that we're like, we've got to build a pack around this. But there's so many more that are hard to know, like if they're like a tier 1 concern or a tier 2, because we attacked so many different things as we went through the whole pack. But I wanted to kind of cut you off there because I did want to just make sure that we have like those high level things that makes this pack different. Is it's massively comfortable, super versatile. And even though it's versatile and has organization options, the weight is very low and still gives you all of the benefits of a travel bag, meaning like way less straps, grab handles all over it, things like that. But it also gives you the comfort or the stability and whatnot of a backpacking backpack. So I think that's kind of the high level overview. But I do want to go back to comfort because there's so much to dive into here, particularly before we get into all of the cool organization we did, the materials we did. And I just feel like I would like to tackle that first. So back to what you were saying, when we actually did, like I knew it was a problem. I knew it was a problem for sure already. But with the marketing team a little while back, when we started to launch ads, I went and read hundreds of reviews of these other travel packs out there. And it was crazy how consistent it was that people complained about the hip belts on these packs. I mean, they were like, what is this 1-inch webbing? Like, that's not a hip belt. Like, it just digs into you. And a lot of them have like weird clasps on them that didn't even work, or you couldn't tighten them properly. Like, they didn't pull correctly, or you had to be in a certain angle. And they'd all attribute that to like the comfort of the pack. So I want to take that a step farther because it's easier to say like my hip belt sucks, but really a lot of times if you peel it back one more layer, what they're hoping for is that the hip belt will carry load. And most of that is also enabled by having the right frame in it too. And so two of the major things that we tackled was having a full-sized, and you might hear me moving around on here, and Joseph has installed this backwards. I had this out before, but we have a full-sized hip belt here, right? That's not a 1-inch hip belt. It's probably closer to 4 at the biggest, chunk.
Like the widest?
Yeah. It's adjustable. It has more dense foam in here for comfort. And then the pull system on it is an easy pull system with offset webbing pieces. And that offset webbing also just makes it so there's not one single strap cutting into the front part of your belly, which is something that we really liked. But the fact, like people I think that the hip belt is what's also just carrying all the load. And it does carry load even without a frame, right? But then when you add in the frame aspect, because that's like the underlying problem that I think they weren't voicing quite right in some of these reviews, when you add in a proper frame, proper height, and load lifters, that's the whole package to me. So we looked at a lot of options in the beginning, Brigham, with the frame. We looked at different ways to optimize the frame, play around with the frame to see just what we could do. And essentially what we ended on is saying, what is just the maximum size of frame that will fit a carry-on?
Yeah.
And again, maybe we should disclaimer this too. Every airline has their own carry-on sizes. Almost all of them are within like 1/2 inch in different areas. So this will fit most carry-on requirements is how we say it, although I'd be willing to bet that you'll never have issue with that ever, just as a thought. So we took the parameters that were out there, and we built the frame to be the biggest it possibly could to fit in that. And why is it important that the frame is big, I guess, Brigham? Try to put that into words for people.
So by big, he means tall, how tall the frame is. So it has to be tall enough that for most people, the highest point of the frame is higher than the highest point of your shoulders, so that when you put a load lifter webbing at the highest point of the frame and you pull on the load lifter webbing, it actually takes some of the pressure off the top of your shoulders. So that's called load lift, and that also is what transfers the weight that the pack is carrying, transfers it down to your hips because it's not resting so much on the top of your shoulders now. It's being transferred via that frame to be carried on your hips. So that's how the frame height comes into play.
And our frame is a aluminum frame. Mm-hmm. It's got 2 rods. I mean, connected. It's a single piece, but basically 2 rods go down 2 sides of it with a connection across the top. One of the things that I saw a ton was single stay. So like a single frame piece in the travel bags, which I bent frequently. And then once it bends over and over. Because it just couldn't handle it. Plus, if you've got a single stay, you can't put it right where the load lifters are connecting, which is a part of transferring that load off of your shoulders and down to your hips. And then other packs that I had didn't have a frame at all. They called it a frame, but it's a plastic sheet.
It's a plastic sheet. And I just to clarify, when he's talking about the frame, it's an internal frame. So you're not picturing. If you're just listening, we're not talking about like an exposed metal frame that's on the outside of the pack. It's an internal frame that you would never even know is there if we didn't tell you where to look.
Correct. Right. So we've got a big hip belt that's tuckable. You can tuck it behind the back panel, or you can fully remove it. The hip belt also adjusts width by a little bit, about 1.5 inches.
Yep.
You can actually overlap this. I haven't owned a backpack or seen this done before. This is something we came up with. Am I wrong, Brigham, in saying that there's not many hip belts that adjust like that?
There's not many.
Is there any?
I don't know if I could make the claim that nobody else does it, but it's very uncommon.
Yeah, I really like this because a part of making a hip belt comfortable is having it sized appropriately. This gives you a little bit more sizing options with this. Yeah. And then it is also fully removable. So for those of you that might be watching this, which, by the way, this will make it onto our Live Ultralight podcast YouTube channel. So if you want to go subscribe to that, you can see us, see our smiling faces here. Well, my smiling face, Brigham's
courtesy smile.
Courtesy smile. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so we've got the hip belt. We've got a frame now, a full-size frame that fits carry-on standards, and then we optimize it. One of the big things is that we made it so that the hip belt can really get as low on the pack as possible. That helps as well with some of that load carry. And then we've got load lifters attached to the shoulder harnesses. Now those load lifters are functioning. You'll see that there is actually a gap between where these are connecting and the load lifter. And when you put that on, you can get that frame to sit above your shoulders, which then is where you actually get the load lift. Last thing I would say to cover in the suspension area is just the shoulder straps, or the shoulder strapping system. Like there's a sternum strap. We're using, I don't know how much. I'm trying to remember how much different foams we had to play with, but we've got contoured shoulder strap.
Contoured shoulder straps. Yeah, they are contoured and curved, and then we did play with varying densities and thicknesses of foam, and then found a combination that we also perforate the foam, so there's basically a bunch of holes punched through it, and that it comes up with a great combination of like kind of softness and pliability with enough rigidity without being flimsy and kind of feeling useless. So maybe that could be something we talk about now or later. Is just like you used the word optimize a minute ago, because there was a lot of optimization that we had to do with this pack with the goals that we had from the get-go. So yeah, I mean, maybe before we dive into that, we just round off with that kind of lines out the harness system. Now these are like the shoulder straps here. They've got quick clips, so you can easily disconnect those and tuck those straps in there if you wanted to carry it like suitcase style onto a plane, load it in and out of your car, in and out of an Airbnb or a hotel. You can easily maneuver this, tuck things in, because there aren't any exterior straps on this. We don't have exterior compression straps. Which that was another kind of early on parameter that we wanted to meet, was we didn't want a lot of exterior webbing, just stuff that's going to be flopping around and getting snagged on things. Yeah, you don't want it catching on your car seats, on your airplane seats, or if you ever throwing it on a cart or something like that, loading it overhead, those straps become a nuisance pretty quick. Probably the last thing with the suspension would be the back panel, like the back pad. So that's again kind of designed with a lot of requirements in mind. But again, like for the comfort, We use like a spacer mesh on the outside. It's called a triangle foam. It's basically a ridged foam.
You might be able to hear this, but that is me feeling the triangle underneath that spacer mesh for breathability and
breathability, comfort, kind of that right balance of softness with the foam.
Yeah. So really what that equates to is, and I think I've actually said this on a podcast beforehand, is just, the easiest one, probably because it was the last time I used a really uncomfortable pack, was when we were coming back from Vietnam. We had a week's worth of stuff in our packs, and then we loaded up on a bunch of samples of stuff. We stuffed it into our bags, and our bags were incredibly full and incredibly heavy. And I was so uncomfortable in the airport that, I was pulling on and off the waist strap. I was adjusting the straps constantly. I was carrying it in my hand, and it just stuck off me like a turtle shell, and my shoulders were killing me. And then like when I do the waist strap, it like, and this is kind of like vain almost, but like, because it's a single like webbing strap that was like a 1-inch webbing strap for most of that, it just like cuts into your gut and like makes you look fat. Like you just pudge out over it, and it doesn't actually help, and it cuts into your skin almost. It was an incredibly uncomfortable experience. Compare that to one of the last trips I did where I went up to Montana, and I think they had to cancel some flights the day before, so that this little Montana airport was slammed. I had to stand in line with my backpack for an hour just to get through security. And I had stuff in there for fly fishing, for the trip itself. The pack wasn't loaded nearly as heavy, but like I could stand there for an hour totally comfortable with the pack on without weighing down my shoulders, without it cutting into my hips or anything. So just a totally different experience. And I feel like we absolutely nailed that. In fact, at some point we ought to bring them on, but there's members of our team that will even say that that have backed like on backpacking trips with us, that'll claim that this is more comfortable to them, maybe even than the Shadowlight, which is crazy because that's an incredibly comfortable pack. It's one of the biggest points of feedback we get is how comfortable the Shadowlight is, and it's built just for backpacking and carrying heavy loads. But it is that comfortable that we backpack with this bag, do multi-day trips with this bag, and it carries those loads like a backpack should. So that's like, to round that out, it's just a massive upgrade to the overall comfort of a backpack. And you may think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Trust me, it is a big deal when you are not just taking it from, say, your house to a car. When you are actually going through airports, if you ever have to get on a train to go somewhere, if you ever have to do anything other than like a 10-minute walk, you will really appreciate the benefits of that pack and its comfort. So, okay, I think that kind of rounds out the comfort aspect of it for now. From here, I feel like we could go in a bunch of different directions. We could go into the organization. We could go into the weight, the fabrics, and maybe we go to the fabrics next, just because that is kind of base level as well, before we get into more of these nuances of the pack. So we could start covering materials. I feel like there is probably a little bit more philosophy that we could cover in terms of like the thought process of. Let's hear it.
Well, so we started talking about this for a minute early on. Was like, okay, a lot of the travel packs out there, they're designed to just be a piece of luggage, and then so they kind of work pretty well as a piece of luggage, just like a duffel bag or a suitcase. They're designed to work that way, and they work pretty well at it.
And some of them have like the pass-through, right, for like putting on your luggage.
Right. So you can put it over the handle on your check-in.
Which kind of shows you how they're thinking of the pack.
Right. So when I say they work pretty well, like there's still, we have found even deficiencies there, like with the forced organization, or like they designed the pack to work just one way really, as a suitcase. So we kind of the design intent was we wanted to design something, a travel pack that worked just as well, if not better, than any of those other packs that are designed more to function like luggage. So it had to function like a luggage piece, like successfully.
Right.
It has to work as a luggage piece successfully. However, the other half of it is that it has to function as a backpacking pack just as well as it functions as a luggage piece, and not like in a pinch, meaning it has to function as well as a backpacking pack, that there are people that would just choose to take it backpacking just as a backpacking pack. So that was like what we set out to achieve, was it has to be a great suitcase or piece of luggage, but it has to be a great backpack that is comfortable in all situations. So that's where a lot of the optimization came in, where like when we're talking about the hip belt just didn't end up being the dimensions and thickness and adjustability that it is. That was, I mean, I'll say that again, the word optimized to be a certain size that you could put it away and hide it away and nobody knows it's there. But then when you actually use it because you need to use it, that it isn't just barely adequate, it's like substantially comfortable and noticeably comfortable. And so that philosophy of basically, you know, we focus very heavily on backpacking. And so we have a lot of experience with what makes things comfortable for backpacking. And so we're able to basically just apply a lot of that into a piece of luggage, which almost just seems like a no-brainer. Like, why not do that?
It's natural
just
for us.
do that, you know? So that's kind of the philosophy of how we did that. And then just optimizing, you know, identifying, well, what are the things that make a travel pack work well? What are the things that make it obnoxious, like straps all over the place that are getting caught in the overhead compartment, or like
it's not, like, it kind of had to be more of a square shape, right?
Yeah.
Like some of these guys, like I know you've seen them, like they look like a backpacker in an airport or something, and you look at that and you're like, yeah, that's not carry-on approved. How are they getting that? You know, especially when it's like, I always crack up at this one. Last time I was flying to Alaska, this girl had a hunting pack on, massive, had probably a 30 to 40 liter sized sleeping bag attached to the bag. I mean, this pack was almost as tall as she was. And I'm like looking at it like, holy crap. One, that looks miserable. How did you go through security with that? You know, how many times did the straps get stuck on the security like trolley that rolls it through to, you know, and then how are you going to load it in the plane? And it just looked like such a hassle. That's kind of what we're talking about. Like, so that the pack needed to be more square. It needed to be able to kind of sit on its own. Little things like that make a difference when you're traveling.
Yeah, for sure. And I just kind of thought of like, maybe I'll just paint this picture because, you know, hopefully there's people listening to this that are interested in the pack that maybe aren't even backpackers. So a lot of maybe what we're talking about is hard for them to relate to. But let me paint this other scenario. A few years ago, my wife and I went to the UK on vacation. We were there about 10 days. And we, from the airport, like London is a huge city, right? And there's a subway system and there's a bus system. Well, from the airport to where our Airbnb was, like I don't know how far it was, but it took us over an hour of walking from place to place to place, or transit to transit. And like for that trip, like we were like dragging one piece of luggage on London streets, which are mostly, they're very similar to like cobblestone. Like they're not smoothly paved.
Brick.
They're mostly made of like rough cut stone. So that's not ideal. And then just kind of using this, I don't even know what the backpack was for the carry-on, but straps hanging all over the place. And so that is a scenario where now I basically found myself in an urban hike, right? Like the amount of time we were walking around the streets of London, I could have hiked 4 miles. Like that's not uncommon. So to somebody that's not a backpacker thinking, well, how does all this backpacking talk relate? That's how it relates. A few years before that, we flew into Venice in the middle of the night, and I was doing the one bag travel, and I was using a giant lumbar pack. And
Is that a brand? What do you mean lumbar pack?
Like a glorified giant fanny pack, right?
Okay,
a Mountain Smith.
Yeah.
And I got all my stuff in there, and it was August. It was like hot and humid in Venice, Italy, and we're like navigating the streets for like 2 hours walking around. So there's another urban hike where I was not using an optimal luggage system, right?
Yep.
So I hope, maybe that makes things a little bit more relatable for the non, backpacking type.
Well, I can think of two right off the top of my head as well. One, me and my wife were going to go on a cruise up to Alaska, and we flew into Seattle, and we took a taxi to the airport, and then, to a hotel. The next day we got on the cruise ship. That was fine. But getting on the cruise ship, you have to stand there with your luggage. You're navigating through cones and around that, and that's a little process. But getting off, we decided to take public transit back. We had plenty of time, so there was no need to rush anything. And so we ended up walking around some of the streets in downtown Seattle and then getting on a train. But it sounded easy, sounded fun, right? It wasn't even that far. But I had a backpack at that point that did not have this tall of a frame. It wasn't fit for my torso was the biggest thing. It actually was a backpacking backpack, but it didn't fit my torso right. I was typically like a 60 liter and a certain size torso, and I had a bag that was like a little bit smaller, a 45 liter, and it was stuffed full, right? My wife has since done a fantastic job at realizing she doesn't need as many shoes and a few things like that. And I also was packing books and notebooks and electronics, which were all super heavy. So this backpack is killing me. We're walking around the streets, and I've got rolling luggage. And everywhere you go, I mean, it's just the fact of the matter, I feel like, no matter where you're at almost, sidewalks suck. There's potholes everywhere. There's water, at least in Seattle, there's water in every pothole. Mm-hmm. So you're trying not to dunk your bag through it. And, what was supposed to be like this nice leisurely walk around downtown Seattle before we hopped on a train and went to the airport turned into this like incredibly painful scenario for me, at least, because I was trying to carry most of the stuff. Terrible scenario. Another time, I'm in Shanghai, going to Nanjing in China and spending some time over there. And it was like a tiny flight to get into Shanghai, where Shanghai's where all the flights go out of, or I could take a train. Well, the train, for whatever reason, only went so far. So I hop on a train, I go through that transit system, and then I get off, and then I have to walk around this train station and find a way to get to the airport. There's supposed to be a bus. I can't find the bus, so I'm walking in circles. I finally Google Translate a message and start holding it up to people. They find me the bus, which was really nice. But in that whole process, I'm just walking around in circles with, at that point, I had a different travel bag that I was, anyways, and it again was just super uncomfortable. The hip belt is non-existent, just worked like crap. And then the bag itself looked like crap because I didn't have it completely full. And when it's not completely full, it was this baggy carcass on my back. Like it doesn't have any shape, form, look. But anyways, like very quickly, even stuff where you're just flying in, going to hotel to hotel. I wasn't backpacking on that. I wasn't even traveling really. I was mainly going and meeting business partners and stuff out there. But even in a scenario like that, like sometimes you just need to use different transit than a typical taxi or straight into an airport. So there's always going to be room for something like this. And that's the whole appeal to one bag travel is you're light and you're free and you're fast. Like if you can travel with one bag, it makes travel easier. So anyways, we totally deviated here.
Yeah.
But it is important because that's what's going through our heads as we're designing this pack is it's got to check these boxes and become the bag that solves these problems for us so that we really can have like this one tool that just enables us to do so many trips around the whole world.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Off the soapbox here for a second. What do we want to tackle? I mean, there's so many, for those of you that don't know, backpacks are incredibly complicated, and when I look at this backpack, I almost feel like I'm looking at just art. Even the packs we are kind of negatively talking about, they're art in their own way, and the designers were likely building them with different parameters and thoughts in mind. But man, backpacks are complicated because there's hundreds of pieces getting sewn into this bag. You might look at a bag and think, oh, it's pretty simple, but even the most simple of bags, there are so many pieces, so many patterns that go into it. So when I look at this, I'm like, where do you start? It almost feels overwhelming because there's just so much in this bag. So what do you think, Brigham? Where do we start?
Well, maybe we could kind of flow into, materials and material selection and kind of what do we base those decisions on, which One of the things we mentioned early on was like the weight of the pack. We didn't want a heavy pack. We kind of focus on like the ultralight backpacking, right? So again, we're kind of taking our heritage and what we do and putting it into this travel pack. So to me, it just doesn't make any sense to start with a backpack that weighs like 5 to 7 pounds.
Yeah.
Like that's my entire clothes for a trip could be 3 pounds. So, we wanted the backpack to be very lightweight. And if we could make it lighter than any other travel pack out there, then that would be great. But it still has to meet all the rest of the requirements. So it has to be comfortable, it has to be durable enough, has to be intuitive and have the organization that people can use or choose not to use. So, we went into material selection, and to achieve a strong yet lightweight main fabric, we just kind of went to what we have a lot of confidence in already, which is a nylon base fabric with a Spectra ripstop grid. The Spectra makes the fabric as a whole very, very strong and abrasion resistant. So we use as the main fabric, it's a 210 denier nylon with a 400 denier Spectra grid. So the ripstop is Spectra fibers that are a thicker, a bigger thickness than the base fabric.
And as you're looking at this, if you're looking on the video, you'll see it almost is like a honeycomb type feeling. And if you rub your hand across it, it has a texture because that Spectra rises above it because it's that thicker material, which, like Brigham said, it has a couple functions. One, like if you did somehow like damage your pack, right? Like that ripstop is there to keep it from spreading.
Right.
Which we've seen. I think we've got some footage out there where we've seen it on the Shadow Light when we were overstressing the Shadow Light with rocks and having races, and the nylon peeled away where McClin fell and scraped across the cement, and the Spectra was intact. The backpack, I still use it to this day. The other thing though is like if this is scraping across something, that honeycomb can also help to take the abrasion off of the lighter weight fabrics underneath it. But what it equates to is a very, very strong, very capable fabric that doesn't need to be 1,000 D Cordura that weighs 4 times the amount of this fabric.
Yeah, and also it stays consistent with the philosophy of the backpack is like this is not a check-in bag. Like we want people to feel free and light and fast. We want this to be the one thing they carry onto the plane and put in the overhead compartment or on a bus or a train and just go. So it totally exceeds the durability requirement for that, and it just keeps the overall weight of the backpack very, very light.
Yes. Yeah. The bag weighs in at 2 pounds. Is it 13 ounces?
So 2 pounds and 13 ounces.
So which is dang near like an ultralight level backpack for backpacking. But with the amount of additional compartments and storage and all the things we put into this, that's crazy exceptional. Like when you really think about like the Shadow Light pack, our Shadow Light pack at 2 pounds, think about this being only 13 ounces heavier. You're like, has a heavier fabric, grab handles everywhere, extra pockets, extra zippers, mesh internal organizers. I mean, that is an incredible feat. I mean, really impressive.
I do feel like, I can confidently say like people should not be concerned about the weight because like this thing is robustly built. Like the backpack, there's strategically placed padding inside, so certain panels are padded with EVA foam. That's
one of the things we had to face down, right? Is a lot of these packs, travel packs, shove foam in every crevice of the pack for it to look good or have structure, right?
Right.
So it's like that was something that we had to face in design is we do want the pack to look good, but we don't want to just shove foam everywhere just to shove foam everywhere, right? Like it needs to have real features and real function, which I really like what we ended up with, which is the bottom has foam. So if you were to miss the laptop sleeve or have something in here as you're setting it down, there is foam across the bottom. Mm-hmm. Obviously the padded laptop sleeve, so there's foam there. And then we ended up putting foam right in this outside pocket that has a drop pocket. It's really good for like an iPad. And that's like the one area too that it does make the pack look a little bit better, but it's still super functional. Like we didn't just put it there just for look either, even though it does help with the look of the pack and making it look, more full and whatnot. But the whole idea is that's a great laptop sleeve, and it does keep structure to use that pocket a little bit better, and so on and so forth. But that keeps the pack super light and super functional. Like it really has the padding everywhere that it needs the padding.
Yeah. Yeah, we wanted padding to protect things that are the most likely to need protection, or like if you set it down, like you can stand the bag up on the bottom, it'll just stand there and the bottom's padded. Same thing, like if the pack happens to fall backwards, like, that pocket is padded. And then obviously the part that faces your back is padded as well.
Right. Okay, that's materials. Do we want to talk hardware, or do we want to kind of like open up the pack?
We can breeze through hardware real quick. I mean, we're not going to skimp on anything, so we use all Duraflex plastic hardware, YKK zippers, and the highest quality foams that are available. So,
and I think like the biggest, so everything is Duraflex and YKK. I think the biggest thing that adds to this pack are these Duraflex gatekeepers.
Yep.
So I'm playing with one that's on the load lifter strap right now. But this is an incredibly durable, incredibly strong system that allows you to be modular with it. So we have tabs all over the backpack that enable you to use 4 included accessory straps to strap things to the outside of the pack, to the inside of the pack. And then we've used them in the design itself as well. But that's a piece of hardware that you're going to want to look at yourself if you've never seen these, because it enabled us to do a lot. So when we went to Olympic, we could strap a bear canister to the outside of the pack, no problem. When we've been backpacking and we have tripods for filming or whatever, you can use those to attach the tripod and have it run out of the pocket. But that's a piece of hardware that honestly makes this pack so much better and creates so much modularity and usefulness. So that was kind of the main hardware piece that I really wanted to pinpoint, other than just all of the components are a Duraflex high quality component.
Yeah. The reasoning for having those shoulder straps disconnectable is so you can really easily and cleanly tuck the shoulder straps away. So there's no exposed webbing whatsoever. They'll tuck away. So the shoulder straps disconnect at the bottom of the pack and at the top. So that shoulder strap tucks away, and so maybe two inches of the actual shoulder strap, the padded section, is even visible. Yeah. So it just keeps it really clean and makes it really fast and easy to set it up that way.
Yeah. So let's move into the main compartment. Okay. Mainly because another massive concern that we had with this pack and other packs was the fact of like forced organization and like sometimes if the pack isn't full, it looks like crap and just doesn't, and the load inside of it became floppy. Yeah. So it wasn't secure anymore. There's a few things there. So if I open this pack up, first off, the first thing that's really neat about this pack and that I love is it's got a massive horseshoe zipper. And if you just undo the very top section, you can flip over, I won't call it a lid because it's not detachable, but it's like a lid-like structure. And I can get into my laptop, or I can load the bag from the top if I just want to be setting things in straight from the top of this bag. But as we know with travel, it can be super handy to be able to fully open your bag, see everything that's in there, and organize it in that way, which is why this horseshoe zipper extends the length of the pack and goes all the way down to the bottom, and then you can flip this all the way over. Inside of this main compartment, it can load just like, say, a duffel bag. Like there's no like pocketing that you have to use. So if you wanted to just have this massive main compartment that I believe is 37 liters.
Yeah, 37 liters.
You've got one big pocket that's 37 liters. So that just gives you a variety of options of what you want to pack. For instance, when I went to Mexico, I had to pack life jackets. I had puddle jumpers, I guess, those things that go on your arms, and wrap around their chests, because we were going down there to this resort, and my kids both wear life jackets at all times. And So I used one of our accessories to pack those down, but I needed this space, and if it had been another pack that forced me to organize another way, it might have just been too bulky of an item to fit in my backpack, and then what? Like, there's not good options after that. So having this big, massive compartment is really handy. Another use case scenario is when we went to Olympic, I got to pack a sleeping bag. I had the top quilt, a tent, and a pad all in here, and it needed to be big enough to fit those. You can't cut a top quilt in half and separate it into 2 pockets, right? So that's where this use case really comes into play. But then we all still want to have organization options, because sometimes you need an extra pair of shoes. Sometimes you're bringing sandals. Sometimes you're bringing dress shoes, whatever it is. Or sometimes you want to separate laundry. Want to keep my socks and underwear over here, and so that they're not floating around the bag so much because they're smaller items. And that's where some of this additional pocketing comes into play. So what did we do for that, Brigham? Like what?
Well, we wanted to maintain the big open section of the main compartment, but we wanted any pocketing that we added to not really be in the way. We wanted it to be substantial, very useful, and intuitive, so people kind of just use it however their eyes kind of lead them to. But if you don't use it, it's not in the way at all. Like, it just doesn't even take up space. But we wanted some good options. So we have these long side pockets on the inside. They're at least 12 inches long.
I mean, this one extends basically from the tips of my fingers almost to my elbow.
Yeah.
It drops down that far.
So they're about 3/4 height of the whole pack, I would say.
Yeah, about 17, 18 inches deep.
Yep. So one of those on each side. Those are open on the top. So they're really easy to just kind of slide things down in there or drop things in there, and they stay put. And those pockets, they just are right up against the side panel of the backpack, so they're out of the way. And those are a stretch mesh, so you can kind of see into the pocket to see what's there. They do stretch, so if you're putting something bulky in there, it will stretch to accommodate that.
There's a lot of stretch in them. And we've done a different color on the inside as well. So it's a more high contrast color. So just like you said, you can really see what's inside that mesh, because on the back side of it is a lighter color.
Yeah. So those are actually really useful. And I find like everybody uses them a different way for like a different thing. Like my thing is to put socks in them, because like a rolled up pair of socks, they just stack up really nicely in there. But there's all like I said, everybody kind of seems to use them a different way. When
I took this to Montana, I took my Tenkara fly fishing rod.
Yeah.
Dropped it right down the side, and it was like it was gone. It was like it just stayed right there, and I could pack all around it easy.
Yeah. In fact, probably a lot of I think a lot of 4-piece fly rods and the case would fit in there. So there's one on each side on the inside, and then we put this big stretch mesh pocket with a zipper on the kind of the main panel that closes the pack. So it's like the inside face of the main zipper.
So like picture where the laptop sleeve is on a backpack, opposing that, opposite that.
Yep.
There's
that is a very substantial pocket. Like, it has a ton of volume built into it.
But it's a pleated volume, so it still hugs the pack when not in use.
Yep.
Like, if you're not going to use it. But I would be willing to bet money you'll use it. To me, it's like the money pocket in here. Like, it's the best one. You know, you can fit a full pair of shoes in there. Actually, I fit sandals on the side drop pockets as well. Like, when I went to Mexico, I put my sandals in that. But I fit shoes in here, or a ton of clothing that I want to stay organized. But that's it. That pocket's like the money pocket.
It really is. And like it's stretch mesh intentionally, because the thinking was, well, what if somebody wants to use that for their dirty clothes? Like, you can put your whole trip's worth of dirty clothes in there, and then they're separated from everything else. But it's a stretch mesh, so it's also going to kind of breathe well and help prevent some odor buildup if you're really lazy and you just keep wet, dirty, nasty clothes in there for 10 days. But yeah, there's a zipper at the top of that. That's a really useful pocket. And then, in that main compartment, we've got a padded, suspended laptop sleeve. So, if you set the backpack down hard with your laptop in there, the laptop's never going to hit the ground.
Frame will protect that, as well as about 4 inches between the bottom of it and the ground.
Yep.
Let's talk for a second. We've also got the webbing tabs on the inside of this. Those webbing tabs pair with the accessory system we talked about, straps.
Yep.
So you could lash anything down you want inside of here. I've done this from time to time. It's not something that like I'm used to or like love to use like the most.
Mm-hmm.
I'm typically using those straps on the outside of the pack, but I have seen people use them highly successfully. Now there's they've used them to. I've seen, I think in our Kickstarter video, actually, they had a camera that they were using in there so that it wasn't flopping around inside the pack ever, or was just very secure, like kind of like a safety system, which makes sense. But you could attach things inside of there, like if you did have a camera carry case, for instance, you could use that, run that through a strap and kind of have it secure in here. You could lash down clothes. I have taken one of our accessory bags that I was like, it was kind of like a long-term storage. It was when I had a top quilt and a tent and a pad all in a bag, one of our compression dry bags. I had that all compressed and I lashed that down in there, and so it was easier to pack around. But that's one additional feature that it's just nice that it adds almost no weight, but it is a like option to do something.
Yeah.
And then I think last week, and maybe not last, but we got to talk about the compression system at some point, because
that's probably the more significant thing to cover on the inside. So, think about, we've talked about this big open main compartment. Imagine the scenario of you travel to your destination, you check in at an Airbnb or a hotel or whatever, a cabin, but then you want to go, you've only brought the one bag. Okay, so again, we want this thing to be versatile, but if there's not much in the backpack, then your contents could be rattling around, shifting around, and it doesn't make things very stable. The backpack kind of hangs away from your body, and it's just not an ideal scenario if the backpack is like even half full. So we wanted to address that, keeping in mind that we don't want external compression straps. We don't want webbing on the outside that you have to crank down to kind of compress the backpack, to kind of basically make the volume smaller.
Right, that's a massive pain point if you've got a typical hiking backpack. Just straps everywhere, right?
Yeah, so that was from the get-go, that was not an option. We don't want straps on the outside, but we wanted a way to kind of manage the excess volume of the pack when it's not being used. So we came up with this, we just call it an internal compression system, that reduces basically the side. If you're looking at the side profile of the pack, it reduces the thickness of the pack volume. So basically what it does is there's just on each side, there's 3 little clips or buckles that when the backpack is empty or full, you clip them together, and now it kind of just squeezes the backpack down a little bit so that it's not flopping around as much, and it contains whatever is in there. It contains it better. It prevents things from bouncing around or moving around, which, we want people to like get out there and get after it on their trips and adventures and their vacations. So we just don't want them to have any issues with that. So
it's like Derek takes this pack to Guatemala, and he's like, I had it all packed up and I had so much room still in it because I wear an extra small size of clothing and everything, and I forget half my stuff. I'm just kidding, Derek. But he had so much extra room in there. He's like, I threw a snorkel and mask and stuff in there just for the heck of flippers, full set of flippers. But also what he could have easily done though is clipped some of these down, and now the pack just lost almost half its volume, at least in that main compartment, and it fits him still. Like, he doesn't need to pack extra stuff. He did, kind of. But like, you don't need to pack extra stuff. When I'm taking it to even the gym in the morning, or if I'm like going to a weekend up at my parents, taking my kids up to my parents or something like that, I might not need the full volume. And so I can clip some or all of these down and just compress that, and it shrinks the whole size of the pack and keeps it super stable.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone who does this. I don't know of any internal compression systems out there. They're knowing this world, there probably is somewhere, but and I don't know who came up with the idea between me and Brigham either, but either way, I'm going to pat Brigham on the back. I think this is one of the most amazing features of the pack. I think that I think it's just genius, and it works so well, and it keeps the bag so clean. Yeah. It's just a really ingenious way to keep the straps off the pack and give you the customization and load carry ability that you want. You know, because again, certain packs I've tested, like if they're half full, they look so bad and they flop around. And as you're trying to set them down, move with them, it's like they just fall all over. Like some of them have, say, pockets in the upper half and on like this back quadrant I don't even know how to explain that, but like the most unideal place to have. But because they're forced organization, they're making you pack there, and there's no way to compress it down, and it becomes this whole mess. And so this is phenomenal. I typically am using it, especially in travel. I'll have this pack loaded up, and then when I get to the destination, when I did go to Mexico last, like I dropped everything out of it, and I still took it when I went to go down to some Mayan ruins, right? And so I still took this pack. I loaded it up with stuff like water bottles and sunscreen, and kind of had the I was carrying the stuff for the whole group, but I clip all those compression systems down, and now it's just a backpack. Now it's not a bigger size travel pack. It
to help people visualize again, it just the side profile just becomes a lot thinner. It basically becomes half as thick, or half thinner. So it just isn't sticking out or flopping around. So, yeah.
And in testing, you'll love it. I guess it's like you don't notice these little tabs on the inside until you need them. They're just there. They're not in the way at all. But then when you go to use this thing, you're just going to be like, wow, it works. Yeah. And in testing, people have loved it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's different. So I'll admit, like, if you just show this to somebody, they don't like automatically necessarily know what to do there. And so, but once you show people, it clicks, and then they're using it all the time, because it just makes the pack ride smaller. And so
I typically will run with, I typically will, if I'm backpacking and my pack isn't full, I'll typically clip the bottom ones to carry the load higher up. And then on a daily basis, when I don't need the full volume, I find myself clipping the top closed because it looks a little more aesthetically pleasing, I think. But overall, it's just, I use it in different ways, and I often am using only like one set of the clips because I still need most of the volume or a portion of the volume. And all right, anything? Oh, long-term storage. Let's talk about that. We call this the long-term storage pocket. Really, it is the frame. Yeah,
it's
pocket.
it's the access to the internal frame.
That's getting into the internal frame, and we actually this came about through the prototyping process. How many prototypes do you think I don't even know, but there's so many different prototypes and models that I had someone wanting to borrow one, a family member, and I was like sorting through them, and I could not keep them straight. I'm like, I don't know, this is which prototype this is. I don't know what it has and what it doesn't have, but here you go. But inside of this, on one of the prototypes, one of us tucked the hip belt into this back panel, and some of the Velcro was like catching on the fabric. And so we actually lined this as well to keep it a little bit more useful. But now a lot of times what we'll use this long-term storage pocket for is that's where we'll put the hip belt. So like if you're not going to be using the hip belt or needing it, we'll stuff that down in there. When I've gone into Mexico or these other areas, I've put cash in there sometimes, like because it's just a more hidden, not a place you're typically looking for. But it's not a pocket that we would suggest like getting in and out of all the time. Yeah. And when it's loaded, it's going to be a little bit harder to close that pocket just because the fabric's all getting taken up other places. But it's a really cool pocket. You can see the frame right in here, but mainly it's just kind of a hidden, and we call it a long-term storage pocket.
Essentially, it's just a big sleeve behind the laptop sleeve. And, so it, knowing that it is a sleeve, it's not meant to be in and out of a lot. And if you do put something in there like the hip belt, something like that's thin, doesn't take up a lot of bulk, that's the type of thing you would want to put in there, something that you're not going to be retrieving a lot. So yeah, it kind of just worked out that way that it ended up working well. So.
Yeah. hypothetically, Brigham, if you were using this pack for adventuring, would you or could you put a water bladder in the laptop sleeve?
Yeah, hypothetically you could.
I actually have thought about that. That was one of the things that I thought people might care about or want. And it's definitely not built for that, but you easily could run a water bladder inside of this pack and pipe it right out. Partially because of the zippers. So let's talk about the zippers. Now, this is a big horseshoe compartment, like we mentioned, which means that it zips in this big horseshoe from the bottom of the back of the pack all the way up and around to kind of where your back of your head is and back down. When we were going through these samples, they didn't quite get what we wanted at first, but we wanted 4 zipper sliders on here for a very specific reason. The 2 that end up being kind of at the top allow you super quick access to laptop, to loading in the top of the pack, and so on and so forth. And most companies, I feel like if they stop there, but we added 2 additional zipper pulls on the bottom. Both of them are behind security webbing loops, which we'll talk about shortly. But what that allows you to do is zip up from the bottom and get quick access to the bottom of your pack.
Yeah.
If you watch any of the videos, like our main video about the pack, you'll see people, basically swing this around their shoulder. Still the pack's like on them, so it's kind of like in sling mode almost. Unzip that portion and grab stuff out of their pack, a camera or a jacket or something like that. But it allows you to get access to any part of your pack super conveniently.
Yeah. The goal is really, that is a long zipper track, right? So it starts at the bottom on one side, goes up to the top, around the front, and then down the other side. So we want this to be very convenient for people. And so having just 2 sliders on there isn't convenient enough. Like that's a lot of zipper. And what if you want to get something from the side or the bottom, or you sling it down onto one shoulder and then bring it around the front of your body? We don't want you to have to go hunting for a zipper slider. And so, like Tayson said, you can access things on the bottom from the side, and never have to move a zipper slider very far. Instead of what if the zipper slider's all the way on the other side of the zipper track? Now you're zipping it all the way around or zipping the pack completely open. So now you just have really minimally restricted access to everything in the pack in the main compartment because of the 4 zipper sliders.
And that's how I've used those sliders mainly to just quickly access, like if I've got a jacket packed in there, take one shoulder out of the harness, kind of swing it around my body, unzip the side, snag a jacket out of there, zip it back up, put it back on my back, and it's super seamless. It does just give you quick access to everything. And on the flip side of that is we also have the ability for those zippers to kind of lock down if you don't want them to open or give easier access to, say a pickpocket in a busy transit system or something like that. They go underneath these webbing loops, these security keepers. So people may not be super familiar with what the heck those are. So at a high level, they have like luggage that has locks on them, right? Like that you can lock your luggage. This is a backpack. We did not make it so that you could lock the luggage per se, but we did make it so that it can be very deterrable or deter people from easily getting into the pocketing on it. Let's say someone's standing behind you in a line. They can't easily zip open a pocket and snag something, at least in most of the pockets and the ones that we've chosen to secure. So on the bottom of these tracks, there are these webbing loops that you can pull the, what do you call that?
That's just the zipper pull.
The zipper pull, you can pull that down through, and it makes it so that you just can't open that zipper nearly as easy. What I do a lot of times, like if I'm backpacking, is I can still zip that zipper closed by just kind of pushing my thumb through that loop a little bit. So it's all the way secure and closed, but I don't need to secure the tie. So it's a nice versatile piece. And we've got those locks on the bottom of the main compartment, the main back panel pocket, so where you might put an iPad or other valuables there. And then we've also got it on the inside of the top pocket on one of those pockets where I put, say, my passport. So then it's in 2 pockets, and one of them is zipper gated as well. So pretty handy features and something that brings you a little bit of peace of mind as you're running through super busy places. I think that covers the main compartment.
Yep.
Main recap on that is There's no forced organization, but there is still organization. Gives you a ton of customizability. We have accessories. We didn't talk about this. We have accessories that are designed to fit into that pocket or that main compartment, as far as the dimensions and stuff like that, but we'll cover those later if you want some additional organization. It is available. They're super useful, but overall, you can use this pack however you want, and you can compress it however you want and tailor it to whatever trip you are on. All right, let's go to the next biggest pocket.
Yeah.
We already talked a little bit about this. This is the pocket that is, I don't even know how to describe this in audio form, but it's the second biggest pocket that is on the farthest outside.
Yeah.
It's
like it would be the outer panel pocket. So if you're wearing the pack, it's the pocket that's on the outside of the pack, farthest away from your back.
Yes. Right on not on the side or anything like that, not on the top, the back side. And this pocket here, obviously organization's a factor. So inside of this pocket, we have 3 different mesh pockets. Mm-hmm. Kind of same concept as the internal of the main large compartment. So we've got a padded.
The outside panel is padded.
Yep. Maybe I should just have you do this. Apparently I don't have words right now. That's kind of the drop pocket where you can put an iPad. So I put books in there sometimes. I'm not really an iPad guy.
It's really easy to get in and out of because it's open on the top. That pocket is an open pocket. So it's really just slide your hand down in there or just drop things in there.
Yep. I'll throw jackets in there sometimes. I'll also throw notebooks or books in there for me. iPads is the number one thing that other people are using it for. And then on the inside of the pack, we've got 2 zippered compartments. The top one is a zippered mesh pocket that is pleated and volumized. So if you stuff stuff in here, you have a lot of room for that to expand or to fall again. That pleat really makes it fall straight back against the inside if you didn't want to use the pocketing. And then inside of that zippered mesh pocket, we have 2 other nylon pockets where you can drop something maybe around the size of a phone.
Maybe a battery bank.
I keep pens and like laptop connectors and stuff like that in there sometimes. But basically kind of a 3-pocket in one type system for this upper pocket. And then we've got what we call the deep carry pocket. So down under here, it's underneath the fold. So if you zip this down and kind of fold that back panel down, it's deeper than that. You have to reach down in here, and there's another zippered pocket in here. There's no internal pocketing. It's just one big mesh zippered pocket. We call it a deep carry. It's where you could keep stuff that's a little bit more secure. So like I was mentioning earlier, like I put some cash in the back panel. I also put some cash in that deep carry, or just whatever it is. Maybe it's sensitive stuff or something that you just don't want to ever fall out. Maybe it's meds, who knows? But that deep carry pocket, it's not hard to get access to, but it's not like intuitive that it's there even.
Yeah.
If you just pop open the pack, you might not even notice that it's in there.
Yeah. The zippered opening of the deep carry pocket sits lower than the bottom of the exterior zipper that opens up the main pocket. So like you can't even see that it's there because the exterior zipper for the big pocket doesn't allow it to open up that far. So
yeah, it's funny. The first time we got this back in a prototype with those in it, I was like, oh man, Brigham, we need to raise that pocket up. It's just too hard to get to. And then we used the prototype and everyone was like, no, I love that. Yeah. I love that it's deeper in there. Because now I've got this additional more secret or
give you some peace of mind with your sensitive items.
Yep, exactly. So that became like a crowd favorite through all of the feedback. And I mean, even just to touch on that, to kind of deviate for a second, we had a ton of people use this pack.
Yeah.
And a lot of prototypes and a lot of time went into this. I had been prepping the team for this as well for years, Brigham, by loaning them out all of my travel bags. Different team members had been using them and taking them all over the world for years. I told them all, like, because they all knew like I had an idea to build a pack like this at some point. And so when it came time, they all had pretty decent feedback as far as they knew the market, they knew the products pretty well. A lot of hands touched this, and we got a lot of really solid points of feedback from internal to family members to friends to influencers we've shipped the bags to. that have had them since, I want to say even April. We've had influencers that have had different prototypes and bags since April and been gathering feedback. So lots of hands have touched it. On this pocket, is there anything that we missed? We've already talked about that the back panel is padded. It does have a webbing gate on here too, so you can secure this pocket as well. And it's volumized. So that'd be the last thing to touch is if you're looking at this on a side profile, there is like a 3D component to it where there's about it's actually, we dialed this in. Man, that's part of what we need to dive into. Is I'm gonna try to show this on camera while Brigham talks about this, but essentially we played around a ton with the volume of this pocket. The bottom of it is small, the top of it is small, and in the middle is where it's at its widest.
Right.
And that created, why were we playing around with that? What was the recipe there that we were trying to dial in?
Yeah, first, we don't like adding a pocket that is going to just take away volume from somewhere else, meaning just a flat pocket, because if you put something in there, it's going to take the volume out of the main compartment or some other compartment. So we wanted to add, built-in volume. But what we had to iterate and tweak a few times was like how much we wanted that pocket to extend outward. And so we did. We had to dial and adjust, where it extends out the most, just so it doesn't extend out too far. So yeah, if you're looking at the side profile, this pocket has a 3D volume, so meaning it extends away from the bag, but it extends less at the bottom of the pocket and less at the top of the pocket, and most of the volume is kind of right in the middle. So it's kind of like this convex volume built into that pocket.
I think a lot of that curve that we did in this pocketing and the volumizing of this pocketing was important. To me, we first tailored in, I feel like, the bottom so that stuff didn't just fall straight to the bottom and it was hard to get out. It kind of helps hold stuff a little higher in the pocket, which is good for load carry, but it's also just nice to not have everything just drop straight to the bottom and go into like a dark hole down there.
Yeah, and become a giant ball of stuff.
Yep. And then on the top half, we actually did change the volume on this side because it looks a lot cleaner too. Like when you're having pockets that just jut off the pack, that's not always aesthetically as pleasing. So the curve in this was definitely twofold. It was function and it was a little bit of the aesthetics, and it brought in just a really usable portion because, like Brigham said, the fact that it is volumized makes it so that when you use that pocket, it's not just pushing and taking away space from the internal main compartment.
Yep.
So that's that pocket. Super useful pocket for sure. Let's talk about the top pocket now. So on kind of where you would count the hood of this backpack, we've got another horseshoe zipper tract that opens up very wide and gives you a lot of space in here. I don't know how to describe how much space is in there, but like I can put like a Ventus hoodie even in this thing if I want to.
Yeah, I put a rain jacket in there.
But a lot of times, what I'm doing is I'm putting quick access stuff, sunglasses, wallet, keys, stuff like that in here. And you've got essentially 3 pockets in one. You open this up and you've got a main pocket that's just sitting in here. Then on the exterior face of that, you've got another mesh pocket. So another piece that is just there if you want it to organize stuff. Do not have to use it. Does not take away from the pocket itself, but it can stretch and gives you just that ability to have some additional organization.
And it's a zippered pocket, so everybody knows it's a secure pocket. Like nothing's going to fall out.
So picture throwing your chapstick in there and your sunglasses and some stuff like that. That's now secure. It's not going to fall out when you zip this pocket open because it does open very wide, but it doesn't need to be locked per se.
Yeah.
And then on the back side, you've got a nylon pocket. This one does have the security webbing loops. And then on the inside of that, you've got a key hook. So you can clip in your keys, have them locked in and secure. It's got some different attachment points here for webbing. I've used these, obviously the first logical thing would be like pen. You can put a pen in there. But I've used them for battery banks, sticking battery banks in there. I've used them for flashlights. I've used them for... I'm missing something that I found pretty useful in those, but just gives you some additional organization within that. the biggest thing I'll use this pocket for, because it does have that lock on the inside, is my passport goes there.
Yeah.
That's where I'm typically putting my passport. It's still very accessible, but it's not just like easily to open if you put it through these gates here.
Right.
So, but yeah, this is just a really useful pocket for quick access items, and kind of 3 pockets in one that you can use it a whole variety of different ways.
Yeah.
I've put, last thing is the pair of headphones I'm wearing right now, I've put them in this pocket and stuff on travel as well. If you've got a big pair of headphones, it's a great place to put something like that.
Yeah. I think that's a good kind of reference of size that people can expect.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's drop down to the 2 volumized side. We call them water bottle pockets, but really it's a whatever you want it to be pocket.
Yeah.
What do you want to cover with these?
Well, these took some dialing in too, some different kind of going through a few different variations, because again, we wanted to have volume built into the pocket, but just like the back pocket, we didn't want it to extend too far out and just make the pack really wide as you're wearing it. And then we really wanted to be able to fully zip the pocket shut with a 1 liter Nalgene bottle. That was kind of like the size goal. So without taking up volume from the inside of the pack. So we dialed in how much volume to extend outward. And I think we found a pretty good mix. There was a lot of good feedback of people saying that, like, yeah, it totally works, but it just seems to stick out too far. Or that was kind of the main feedback with the volumized pocket. But we also played with the zipper direction, which way to have the zipper, close and open, and then how high the bottom point of the zipper should go. That was another thing we kind of learned through testing different prototypes was if you want to leave that pocket open with, say, a water bottle in it, that zipper, the bottom end of the zipper can't be too low or the bottle will not be secure. It'll flop or fall out too easily. So we messed around with that.
Which I've had go wrong on a variety of other packs I've owned.
Yeah.
Water bottles constantly dropping out of the pack on me.
Yeah. So, we tweaked that and found a pretty good balance. And then just to add kind of another measure of security, we put at the bottom of the zipper opening on that water bottle pocket, we put like a stretch mesh gusset that kind of extends about 2 inches higher than the bottom of the zipper where the zipper end is. So that really contains a water bottle and keeps it secure if the zipper is not zipped shut. So again, to give people an idea of size, like a 1 liter Nalgene bottle will sit in there and the zipper will totally zip shut.
Like Brigham has a Gatorade bottle right here that easily fits all the way inside of that pocket and could easily zip shut around there. But Nalgene obviously is even bigger than that. But if you don't have a Nalgene, you might at least know what like a Powerade or a Gatorade bottle, the thicker ones are.
And then, some of the other testing was like, a lot of people have hydro flasks. Those are really tall. Those are much taller, than like a Nalgene. So anticipating that people might want something like that went into playing with the zipper bottom, how high that extends, and then adding that gusset because we wanted people to be able to put those bottles in there knowing that the zipper wouldn't be able to zip shut, but we still needed that bottle to be secure. So
we also played around with the zipper head being on the bottom, and that's in part too because if you had a tripod or whatever else, trekking poles, whatever that's sitting down in this pocket, you can then zip the bottom of this zipper up a little bit, and that also holds it tighter to you. And then to go along with that, and they're tall pockets, so like as long as you don't have like a massive tripod, you might not even need this. But those strapping systems that I've already talked about with the wire gate carabiners, I'm holding a small right now. But this small was really designed for something like this, where directly above that pocket, there are 2 webbing clips or loops that you can slide these wire gate hardware pieces into and then lash the tripod against the side of the pack to fully secure something like that.
Yeah.
So that's something, that I've frequently carried tripods, and this completely attaches a tripod to the side of the pack. It's quick and easy access, and it's super stable. It's a really good system that plays forward, because this isn't just a water bottle pocket. It's also a side drop pocket, essentially, if you want to look at it that way, or has the ability to pack items that hang outside of that pocket for sure.
Yep.
So it's a really good pocket, and it's really useful. I've never seen anyone that didn't end up using the crap out of that pocket, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. Since you mentioned the straps, to help people visualize, Tayson mentioned the little attachment loops. Those are placed throughout the exterior of the pack. So on each side of the pack, there's 4 loops. So like 2 front, 2 back. And then there's on the bottom of the pack, there's 4 loops on the bottom.
You can attach into the same ones as the gates up here. These are a little bit oversized, so you could get 2 on there.
Yep.
So you could lash something to the top. So how many is that? It's 4.
So 4 on each side, and then
8,
4 on the bottom,
10,
and then the 2 top
12.
ones.
That's 12 available on the outside.
Yeah.
And then on the inside, there's 6 or 12 more. Is it on
12.
both sides?
So
12 more.
Yeah.
So technically, there's 24 of these tiny little loops that you can tack into and create a fully customized modular system. Again, if you're watching this on video, the one strap is not very big. This is the short strap that I'm holding right now. We have a much longer strap that you could use to strap almost anything to this pack that you ever wanted.
It's meant to go like all the way across the pack from one side to the other, whereas the short ones are generally going to be used like just on the sides.
Yeah. And these come with your pack. These are not an accessory or an add-on. They might be, if you wanted more straps for some weird reason, you might be able to buy those. But these are just going to come in your pack as a part of the pack and as part of its features. So that's huge. Dude, that's the pocketing. We've covered almost all the aspects. One of the things we skipped over was maybe the grab handles.
Yeah, that was what I was looking at.
So we have 4 grab handles around this pack. We've got one on the bottom. Yep. We've got 2 on the sides, and then one on the top, where like you're typically used to a backpack having a loop to set it on hang it on a coat rack or something like that. Makes it super easy to put in an overhead bin, to carry as a suitcase style, load it in and out of cars. It just makes it super easy to grab and move on the go at all times.
Yeah, we want people to not have to hunt for a place to grab the pack, or worry about being in a hurry because there's a line behind them in the aisle of the airplane and throwing your pack up there, but wanting to be able to get it at the end of the flight, and worrying, how do I need to orient my pack up there? Just throw it up there. Every side has a handle that you can grab, and you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, the other thing is, occasionally on some of our trips we've been on, I'll wake up and I'll just hear all this rustling. I'll go in the other room and I'll see Brigham. He's loaded up the coda and he's like doing some overhead lifts with it and getting a workout in using the grab handles. So,
My back can't handle that.
But no, they're very useful and make it quick and easy for sure in all forms of transit to move the pack around. And anyways, I had another thought. Part of what I think just makes this pack so cool is that customization. In fact, one of the ways that I use this is totally random. This is a tangent. This is a podcast exclusive I'm going to talk about here. When I took this up to Wyoming more recently, we were in we had an Airbnb little cabin thing, and you could pull all your stuff out and you can put it in like the drawers of the cabinets and stuff. But sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes there's a good space to just set it on top of something. Sometimes there's not. And in this scenario, we basically had this closet. And I'm like, I can take everything out, hang it up or something like that. But what I ended up doing was actually just, I took this accessory strap and I looped it through and I hung my backpack in the closet, which worked and was really good. And I had all this access to everything. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of like rotating. And I was like, I don't love that. So then I just took it and I'm like, I've got these really nice load lifters. So I just popped the load lifter wire gates off, looped them up and over the coat hanger rod.
Oh, yeah.
And then the pack was secure in 2 points and it was just hanging in the closet. And then I had access to everything in the pack and I just used it. Like I pulled all my clothes and used it as it was hanging. And it was kind of a cool little feature. But I think that's just what's cool. Like that's just one example of like, you can just make this pack do what you want it to do because we tried our best not to force anything in this pack and just make it, you know, I hate use the word chameleon. It's not a chameleon. And usually you think of like jack of all trades, master of none. But this really is a masterful pack. And it still gives you that option to just customize it and use it how you want. Dude, I don't know what we didn't cover here, Brigham. I guess the accessories would be the last thing.
Sure.
And I don't know how deep we want to go into on those, but we did feel like the pack needed accessories. For whatever reason, I have 2 here in front of me, and it's not the one that might be the most important to cover. One, a dot bag, is a zippered dry dot bag. An ultralight zippered dry bag. This is a 30D sil nylon with waterproof or water-resistant zippers. I don't know if they ever claim they're waterproof. And we've seam taped the inside. Purpose of that, if something spills inside of there, it's not getting out and onto other clothes in your item.
Right.
Let's say your cologne spills in here, or you've got some shampoo that you need for your silky hair, Brigham. You've got that inside there and it's sealed in. It's a super nice piece. That literally lives in my backpack every day of the year because what I like to use my coda for is I keep, as long as I've got that dot bag in there and I've got typically my laptop and stuff in there, all I've got to do to be prepared for a weekend away is load in a change of clothes and I'm gone. That's all it takes. Yeah. So I kind of just like to leave a dot bag in there with, you know, an extra toothbrush and all of the toiletries. Plus I'm using this. I use it different than most people. This is not the intended purpose, but I take it to the gym whenever I'm going to the gym, and then I'll shower at the gym, come straight to work. And so my pack is just always ready for something like that. So there's the zipper dry bag. There is call this the OV packing cube, I believe. But it's just a square, I call it square, but like a rectangular cube. Yeah. That's zippered. Kind of looks like what maybe like a shoe bag would look like, or you can load clothes into here, dirty clothes. We did add the webbing attachment points for those Duraflex connectors. So you can also like attach, say, the 2 long accessory straps. Yep. You could use this as a sling, or you could put 2 on. You can actually use it as a little backpack in a pinch if you needed to. But I've used this also like when on airplanes. I'll sometimes load this up and take this to my seat as a personal items bag with a book and maybe some charging cables and some things like that. But it's just a versatile way to pack, and you can use that. And you could technically probably lash this down in the pack if you wanted to as well, using these webbing pieces and the internal webbing pieces in the pack as well. So that's what we'll call accessory number 2 is the OV packing cube. And then the last one, which I don't have to showcase if you are on video here, is the compression dry bag. Now, it's really important that we say compression dry bag because I'll be honest, I didn't use dry bags very much, Brigham, in the past. And using what is kind of popular, I guess I should say, in travel is like a vacuum sealed type bag. It's a really handy piece for sure. Some of them will put like valves on them and this, that, and the other. And really so much of that is unnecessary. Yeah. Because if you just understand how to use a dry bag, you can compress those and use them as like a vacuum sealed type bag. So maybe explain how you would do that and maybe how you've used it before.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a roll top dry bag that's seam taped. So it's seam sealed and it uses a waterproof fabric. So it's a waterproof bag that is a roll top. So you put your items in there and then you close it and then you start rolling it down and then you roll it over, fold it over like 4 or 5 times and then you buckle it to itself. You buckle it closed. But before that's how it closes, that's how it functions. But to compress it and kind of get that vacuum seal effect, so you put your contents in there and then you just really only have to fold the top over 1 time and then you just use your knee or you kneel down and use your body weight and just slowly just apply or let your weight sit down on the outside of the bag. So you're compressing the contents and it's pushing the air out. And then you'll see like once all the air is out, it looks like it's vacuum sealed, and then you just fold it over,
roll it
3 or 4 more times, and then buckle it up. And now it looks like this vacuum sealed bag. All your stuff is compressed, and it stays that way. So that's just a really easy way of using a roll top dry bag for compression and keeping everything dry. Yeah. It works really well, and the bag that we offer, it's designed specifically to fit the bottom shape of the backpack, so it matches the bottom shape of the backpack, just so it has a really good clean fit.
Do you have any kind of like an estimated volume size of that piece? 20 liters-ish? Or?
20 to 25 liters.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, like the dot bag, people love the dot bag. Super useful. The packing cube, useful. People rave, I would say, like for instance, I've had like one set of accessories at my house that I've used. And then we go on a trip and my wife has a pack, but she doesn't have a set of accessories. And I'll use the compression, dry bag. And she's always like, where's mine? I want one of those. Yeah. That's the thing I want because I'll take all my clothes or whatever and I'll compress them into half the size. My pack just looks that much lighter. Those puddle jumpers I talked about earlier, circling all the way back to those, I had those loaded in there. I can compress those down a ton so they don't take up such a massive amount of space in my bag. When we went to Seattle, I put my top quilt, my tent, my pad, and then some of like the clothes that I was like sleeping in, so I didn't need access to. Put those all in that dry bag, compress that down and tight, and then it's like out of the way too, so I can work around it during the day, or leave it in the car really easily. If I want to pull it out, I can just drop that in the car. But that has kind of been like a go-to. People love those, and they're super light. It's a really light material. And so all of the accessories are super light, but we are going to offer these in a bundle on the Kickstarter. Now, if you back early on, you'll just get the accessories for free, which is huge. So when this podcast goes live, if you act very quickly, you're going to get all 3 of those accessories for free with your order. If you wait, you'll be able to purchase them at a decent discount, but they're going to retail, I want to say, for around $60, $70 for the bundle. So to get them for free is a big deal. And to get them, or even to get them just at any point on the Kickstarter, you'll still be able to save something on them, over 50%. So you'll want to act on the Kickstarter if you can. But they're all useful. I don't use them every time. I don't use every one of them every time. But they're just another tool in the arsenal of making this backpack work for you the way you want to make it work. Okay, so that's the accessories, and that's the KotaUL. I mean, there's more that goes into it, but most of that is like the back and forth me and Brigham talk about, and Brigham goes through as we go through all these different samples and dialing in different things. But I think we've nailed it and gone pretty deep on a lot of stuff, not only in the design, but in the reason why, which I think is what people love, because when they understand the reason why, the bag makes that much more sense and becomes a staple in their travels in the future for sure. Any kind of final thoughts on the Coda, or just for the audience in general?
Well, I mean, I'm excited for people to get it and get using it. When we started getting prototypes made, I really wanted to just like send it off to the world. I mean, that's kind of what we were able to do with. It was very timely. A lot of people within the company were taking some international trips or some substantial travels, and so it's been a good process. Like I feel like all the feedback has been productive that led to a better version each time. And I think we've kind of accomplished what we set out to. I think it's really comfortable. It achieves a really good balance of travel and adventure and backpacking and all those things.
Yeah. Some of these products we've been turning out lately, you just know how good of a product they are based off of the feedback that you get to see in people's faces when they see the products. Say the Ventus, for instance, man, you hand that to someone and they're like, whoa, what is this? Like it shocks them how puffy it is, but how light it is and the materials. The Coda has also for sure been one like that, where I've got family members who don't backpack or don't, do a lot of the things that I do even, that are like, when is that going to be available? Like, I need that pack. And like, they've seen me wear it, or I've lent it to them for feedback or something. And then they're just adamant of like, when is that thing going to be here? And I think our followers and those that purchase this pack, they're going to get that. I mean, it really is a piece that, it's a critical piece. It's like an everyday piece. Not everyone's going to use it as an everyday piece, but like, it'll feel like that because you can use it in such a massive variety of applications. And I think what's cool about this pack is, to me, it feels like a ticket. It feels like permission to go and do really cool bucket list trips. Maybe yours is to go to Olympic like we did. Maybe yours is to go hike Mount Kinabalu. Maybe yours is to, go down to the Andes or hike Machu Picchu, or maybe it's to go
backpack Europe.
Yes, go hostel to hostel in Europe, or backpack Europe in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
This piece to me feels like a ticket, and I think people will use it that way because it's like you get the pack, you figure out what you need for the trips, you pack inside of that, which we'll have to produce a lot more content on that because there's a lot of really good things you can bring from that ultralight mindset, into travel that we've all done internally in the office. We just haven't talked about it as much, but it really is. It's like this ticket to the world, and that's all you need. All you need can fit in that backpack, and you could go anywhere and do anything you wanted to throughout the whole world. So it's a fun piece. It's a fun piece to have. It's a fun piece to finally get to release the details on and show people. I think that they're going to love the pack, and I think we're going to see some really cool feedback from our customers inside, say, our closed Facebook group for our membership. We're going to see that pack go all over the world. We have a really cool feedback loop in there where people just always posting like where they're taking some of our stuff. So it's just a really fun area. I'm excited to see where this pack goes because I think it is going to be that ticket that takes people all over the world and gives them that permission to skip the rolling luggage, to pack confidently within one carry-on bag and just go and do more. So, okay, I think let's call it a wrap. For those of you that found value in this podcast, make sure you share it. Make sure if you have not left a review for us, please leave a review on the Ultralight podcast. We'll have some more things coming up. We're going to revamp this podcast a little bit over the next couple of months and add a few more things, hopefully improve the quality of the recordings, as well as continue to do things like record, which some of you may be watching this on the video recording, but we'll start taking and doing some of that as well with the podcast. But we really enjoy these. These are some of the episodes you guys love the most, but would love to have some feedback on this. If you have feedback for the podcast, send it over to support@outdoorvitals.com or go on our website, Outdoor Vitals, and just hit the chat little icon and type in your feedback. We'd love to hear that feedback. But with that, thanks for joining us. Go check out the Kickstarter for the Coda while it's there. And if you're missing this, listening to this to, in late November or something like that, just go to our website and we'll have more details there as well. So, okay, we'll catch you on the next one.